The scalding black coffee hit my white silk uniform at the exact second I realized Chloe was smiling. The first sensation was not pain, it was shock. A sharp, terrifying half-second where my mind refused to understand what was happening. Then the heat exploded across my chest. The coffee soaked through the delicate silk instantly, spreading like a dark, burning stain against the fabric I had spent an hour carefully steaming that morning. The liquid was almost boiling. It seeped beneath the collar, crawling over my skin in a cruel wave. I gasped. The sound of the coffee splashing against me echoed through the luxury boutique. A wet, ugly sound. A sound that did not belong among crystal displays, polished marble floors, and expensive laughter. The cup slipped from Chloe's manicured hand and shattered against the floor beside my shoes. Ceramic fragments scattered across the white marble. The bitter smell of roasted coffee filled the air, mixing with the floral perfume of wealthy guests and the faint scent of leather from designer handbags resting on the arms of the socialites surrounding us. Everyone stopped. Everyone looked. And Chloe laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an apologetic laugh. A cold, arrogant laugh that sliced through the silence. "Oh, Eileen," she said, covering her mouth as if she had just witnessed something amusing. "Look at you." I stood frozen. The coffee burned. My skin burned. But somehow the humiliation burned worse. The boutique was filled with people who wore expensive watches and diamond jewelry, people who donated to charity galas and appeared on society pages, people who had never once looked at someone like me unless they needed something carried, organized, or fixed. And now they were all watching me stand there with black coffee dripping from my white uniform. My hands trembled slightly. I forced them still. I could not let them see. I could not give Chloe the satisfaction. "That was an accident," I whispered. Even to my own ears, my voice sounded small, weak. Chloe tilted her head. The expression on her face changed from amusement to disgust. "An accident?" she repeated. She looked around at the people watching. Did everyone hear that? A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. A woman wearing a necklace that probably cost more than my yearly salary pressed her lips together to hide a smile. Chloe stepped closer. Her heels clicked against the marble. Each sound felt like a countdown. "You spill one tiny thing and suddenly it's an accident," Chloe said. "Interesting. Because that sounds exactly like the kind of excuse someone with your background would make." My stomach tightened. "Chloe? No." She raised one finger. "Do not say my name like we are equals." The words landed harder than the coffee. I looked down. On the floor beside us was the report. My report. The performance analysis I had spent 3 months creating. The report that contained every sales prediction, every customer trend, every inventory correction. The report I had stayed awake until 3 a.m. finishing because Chloe demanded perfection. The report that had taken hundreds of hours of my life. It had fallen when the coffee hit me. The pages were spread across the marble. The corner of the document was stained brown. Before I could move, Chloe lifted her foot. My breath caught. No. The word escaped before I could stop it. For the first time, Chloe looked genuinely pleased. She slowly placed her designer heel onto the pages. The sound of paper crushing beneath her shoe was quiet, almost gentle. But it destroyed something inside me. She pressed down harder. "There," she said. Her eyes met mine. "Now it's ruined." My fingers curled into fists at my sides. I wanted to move. I wanted to pull the report away. I wanted to tell her that I had worked harder than anyone in this building, that I had sacrificed weekends, that I had fixed problems she never even knew existed, that every success she bragged about in meetings had pieces of my work hidden beneath it. But my throat closed, because I knew the truth. People like Chloe never listened. They only waited for their turn to speak. "You know what your problem is, Eileen?" Chloe asked. I said nothing. "You actually believed working hard would make people respect you." Her smile widened. The surrounding guests grew quieter. How adorable. My face felt hot, not from the coffee anymore, from the tears threatening to rise. I blinked quickly. No, not here. I would not cry here. I had cried enough in empty bathrooms, enough in my tiny apartment after another impossible deadline, enough silently into my pillow while pretending everything was fine the next morning. I would not give Chloe my tears, not in front of these people. Your position here was a mistake from the beginning, Chloe continued. You were never meant to stand beside executives. She glanced at my stained uniform. You were meant to stay where people like you belong. A painful silence followed. Then she smiled, somewhere practical. My heart sank. I knew what was coming. I hated that I knew. And honestly, Chloe said, I am still amazed you think you belong in this world when your boyfriend is some greasy mechanic. A few people laughed, quietly, carefully, the kind of laughter people made when they wanted to show the powerful person they were on her side. My chest tightened. Don't talk about him. The words came out before I could stop them. Chloe raised her eyebrows. Oh? She looked delighted. Did I touch a sensitive subject? I stared at her. Julian. Just thinking his name brought a strange ache to my chest. The only person who never made me feel small. The only person who looked at me like I was something precious instead of something useful. He is more of a man than anyone in this room, I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I had made a mistake. Chloe laughed louder. There it is. She looked around. She is actually defending him. Her eyes returned to me. Eileen, you are standing in a luxury boutique wearing a ruined uniform after destroying company property, and you are defending a man who spends his days repairing broken machines. Her voice became crueler. A perfect match. My eyes burned. I hated that she was seeing me like this. I hated that everyone was seeing me like this. I hated that after 5 years of giving everything I had to this company, I was still just the woman they could humiliate for entertainment. Inside my mind, everything was falling apart. I felt exhausted. Not physically. Something deeper. A tiredness that reached my bones. How many times could someone be pushed down before they stopped believing they could stand again? How many times could I swallow my anger? How many times could I tell myself tomorrow would be better? I had spent years trying to prove I deserved a place at the table. But maybe Chloe was right. Maybe people like me were never invited to sit. Maybe we were only allowed to clean the table afterward. My vision blurred. I looked away so nobody would notice. I focused on the cold marble beneath my shoes, the smooth surface, the expensive lights reflecting above me, the scent of luxury surrounding me. Everything in this room was beautiful. Everything except the way people treated those who served them. I am terminating your employment, Chloe announced. The words barely registered. You are fired. A strange emptiness spread through me. I had expected anger. I expected panic. Instead, I felt nothing. Just a hollow space where hope used to be. Chloe turned toward the crowd. Security will remove her if necessary. Then she looked back at me. Take your things and leave. I lowered my head. I could feel the tears gathering. I forced them back. One breath, then another. Do not break, do not break. But Chloe did not notice my silence. She had already won, or at least she thought she had, because she had forgotten one thing. She was not the only person in that room. In the darkest corner of the boutique, away from the golden lights and the laughing guests, Julian had been sitting quietly. Until that moment. He had looked like he always did. A man nobody noticed. A man wearing a faded jacket. A man sitting alone while the powerful people around him talked about money, influence, and status. But Julian had never been ordinary. Not really. His eyes had been lowered, his expression calm, almost impossibly calm, until the coffee touched my uniform, until Chloe laughed, until she stepped on my work, until she spoke about him. Something changed. The air around him became heavy, the kind of heaviness that came before a storm. His hand tightened around the brass pillar beside him. At first, nobody noticed. The metal gave a small sound, a soft crack, then another. Julian did not move. He did not stand. He did not speak, but the solid brass pillar beneath his fingers began to bend. The polished metal warped slowly under the impossible pressure of his grip. The expensive finish cracked. The structure groaned. A nearby guest turned, confused. What was that? Nobody answered, because Julian's entire presence had changed. The quiet man in the corner disappeared. What remained was something ancient, something powerful, something dangerous. His jaw tightened. His shoulders became perfectly still. The faded jacket suddenly looked like a disguise, because it was. The man beneath it was not someone who belonged in the shadows. The shadows belonged to him. The brass pillar finally collapsed inward, crushed beneath his bare hand. The sound echoed through the boutique. Every conversation stopped. Every smile disappeared. Julian slowly lifted his head, and his eyes changed. The dark color vanished. Replacing it was a terrifying amber gold glow. Not the reflection of the lights, not an illusion. Something alive, something fierce, something that made even the air seem to retreat. His gaze moved across the room, past the guests, past Chloe, until it reached me. For the first time all evening, I felt something other than humiliation. I felt warmth. I felt safety. But beneath that warmth was something far more frightening. A promise. Julian had spent years hiding who he truly was. He had let the world underestimate him. He had smiled quietly. He had repaired old machines. He had ridden an old motorcycle through the rain. He had saved the best pieces of every meal for me and pretended he was not hungry. He had allowed everyone to believe he was ordinary. But watching me stand there broken, watching another person try to destroy the woman he loved, something inside him had finally reached its limit. The room became silent. Julian stood, slowly, deliberately, and every person who looked at him understood the same thing. The quiet man in the corner was no longer watching. He was done waiting, but I did not see him. Not yet. My eyes were still trapped on the ruined pages beneath Chloe's heel. The report. The same report I had poured my entire soul into. The ink was blurred by coffee. The edges were torn. The words I had carefully chosen, the numbers I had checked 100 times, the ideas I had fought to bring forward, all of it was now stained and crushed beneath someone else's shoe. I stared at those pages, and something inside me cracked, because it was not just paper. It was 5 years. 5 years of waking before sunrise. 5 years of coming home after midnight. 5 years of smiling through exhaustion because I could not afford to stop. 5 years of telling myself that if I worked harder, if I sacrificed more, if I became impossible to replace, then eventually someone would see me. But nobody had. The cold marble beneath my feet blurred. The voices around me faded. The expensive perfume. The whispers. The distant sound of luxury heels moving across the floor. Everything disappeared. And suddenly, I was somewhere else. 5 years earlier. I remembered the first day I walked into the company. I remembered how bright everything looked. The towering glass windows, the polished floors, the executives wearing perfect suits and carrying themselves like they owned the world. I had been young, hopeful. I believed effort mattered. I believed kindness mattered. I believed people noticed when someone gave everything they had. I was wrong. The first year was easy to survive because I still had hope. The second year taught me how quickly hope could disappear. My manager learned that I would never say no. A late report? Give it to Eileen. A difficult client? Give it to Eileen. A mistake made by someone higher up? Give it to Eileen. I became the person who cleaned up everyone else's disasters. I stayed late while others went home. I answered messages while executives slept. I fixed problems nobody knew existed. And every time I thought I had finally proven myself, another impossible demand appeared. But I endured, because my sister needed me. Her medical treatments became more expensive every year. The hospital bills arrived faster than I could pay them. Every number on those statements felt like a threat. I still remembered sitting at the kitchen table at 3 in the morning, surrounded by bills and empty coffee cups, calculating what I could cut. Food, clothes, sleep. Everything became optional, except her treatment. My sister was the only family I had left. So I stayed. I accepted the insults. I accepted the unfair workload. I accepted being invisible. Because every paycheck meant another appointment, another chance, another month where my sister could breathe without pain. But there was one person who saw me. One person who never asked what I could give him. Julian. The memory of him came differently. Not like the pain. Like warmth. Like sunlight breaking through a storm. He never entered my life loudly. He did not arrive with expensive gifts or grand promises. He simply stayed. That was what made him different. Everyone else wanted something from me. Julian just wanted me to be okay. I remembered the first time I realized that. It was a night when I had worked nearly 18 hours. Rain poured over the city, the kind of rain that made the streets shine black beneath the lights. I had walked out of the office building long after everyone else had left. My shoulders hurt. My eyes burned. I had not eaten dinner. I had barely remembered to breathe. And then I saw him. Julian was waiting across the street, sitting on his old motorcycle. The motorcycle looked like it had survived 100 storms. The paint was faded. The metal was scratched. The engine made a rough sound every time he started it. But to me, that motorcycle was the most beautiful thing in the world because it meant he was there. He was wearing a worn jacket that had clearly seen better days. Rainwater dripped from his hair. He must have been waiting for hours. "Julian?" I asked. He smiled, that quiet, gentle smile that always made the world feel less cruel. "You're late." I looked at the time. "It is almost midnight." He nodded. I noticed. I frowned. "Why are you still here?" He looked confused. "Because you weren't home." That was it. No complaint, no accusation, no question about why I worked so much. Just a simple truth. You weren't home. So I waited. I remembered standing there in the rain, trying so hard not to cry, because nobody had ever waited for me before. Not like that. Julian reached into his jacket and pulled out 2 small containers. "I saved dinner." I laughed weakly. "Julian, that's probably cold." "It is." "You still brought it?" He shrugged. "I thought cold food was better than no food." We sat beneath the weak shelter of an old building entrance while the rain poured around us. The meal was cheap, simple, nothing that anyone in that luxury boutique would have considered valuable. But I remembered every bite, because for the first time in months, I was not thinking about deadlines. I was not thinking about bills. I was not thinking about proving myself. I was just sitting beside someone who cared. Julian gave me the larger portion. I noticed. "You ate already?" I asked. He looked away. "Of course." I narrowed my eyes. He smiled slightly. The truth was obvious. He had saved the best part for me, like he always did. He always pretended he did not need anything. But I knew him. I knew the quiet sacrifices, the small acts of love hidden inside ordinary moments, when the entire world treated me like I was only valuable because of what I could produce. Julian treated me like I was valuable because I existed. He was my safe place, my shelter, the one corner of the world where I did not have to pretend I was strong. The memory faded slowly. The warmth disappeared. And the cold marble returned. The boutique returned. The humiliation returned. I was standing in front of Chloe again. The coffee stain was still on my uniform. The report was still beneath her shoe. But now I remembered why I had survived 5 years. Not because this company valued me. Not because people like Chloe ever cared. I survived because somewhere in the world, there was a man who looked at me and saw something worth protecting. I lifted my eyes. For a moment, I searched for him. Julian. My heart ached, because I knew what he must be feeling. I knew his silence. I knew the way he held back anger. But I also knew Julian. He was patient. He was gentle. He hated violence. He hated unnecessary conflict. He would rather walk away than hurt someone. And that was why I loved him. Because beneath all that quiet strength was the kindest soul I had ever known. Unfortunately, Chloe knew nothing about kindness. She only knew power, and she was drunk on it. She looked around the room, enjoying the attention, the embarrassment, the control. Then her gaze moved toward Julian. The faint smile returned. "Oh," she said. She looked him up and down. "You're still here." Julian did not answer. Chloe laughed. "I suppose I should have expected that." She turned toward the entrance. "Security," the word echoed. 2 seconds later, heavy footsteps approached. 2 large security guards entered the boutique. They were broad-shouldered men wearing dark uniforms. Their expressions were blank. Professional, the kind of people hired to remove problems without asking questions. Chloe pointed at me. "Remove her." Then she pointed toward Julian. "And remove him too." A few guests watched silently. Chloe crossed her arms. "Throw them both out." She smiled. "Especially the mechanic." My fingers tightened. The pain in my chest became unbearable. Not because of what she said about me. I had heard worse. But because she looked at Julian like he was nothing. Like the man who had held me together through my darkest moments was disposable. "Don't touch him," I whispered. Chloe looked amused. "Still protecting him?" She shook her head. "That is honestly pathetic." The guard stepped closer. The entire boutique watched, but Julian remained still, too still. His amber gold eyes remained fixed on Chloe. The air around him felt different now. The warmth I knew was still there, but beneath it was something else, something ancient, something powerful, something even Chloe, with all her arrogance, could not understand. The guards reached forward, and for the first time, everyone in that room realized they might have made a terrible mistake, because the man they were about to remove from the boutique was not the one who needed protection. I was. The thought had barely formed when one of the guards reached toward me. His large hand moved forward, and Julian moved. Not quickly, not violently, just enough. One moment he was standing several feet away, hidden beneath the dim lights of the boutique's darkest corner. The next moment, he was between me and the guards. I did not even see him cross the distance. The air shifted. The temperature seemed to drop. The guards stopped. Even Chloe's confident expression faltered for the smallest fraction of a second. Julian stood with his back toward me. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand curled slowly into a fist, the way he controlled every breath. He was still Julian, my Julian, the man who brought me warm tea when I worked late, the man who remembered every little thing I liked, the man who would rather repair an old engine than fight with another person. But there was something else beneath that calm exterior now. Something powerful. Something that had been sleeping. "Move," one of the guards ordered. His voice was firm. He did not know. None of them knew. Julian looked at him. No anger, no hatred, just a quiet expression that somehow felt more frightening than rage. "I don't think you understand the situation," Chloe said from behind them. Her confidence had returned. She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the marble. "Julian, was it?" She looked him over again. "Whatever little fantasy you have about protecting her ends now." She laughed softly. "Do you really think you can challenge me here?" Julian ignored her. His eyes remained on me. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The wealthy guests, the guards, the ruined report, the humiliation, all of it. He looked at me as if he was asking a question without words. "Are you hurt?" I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell him I was fine. I wanted to smile and pretend everything was okay. But I could not, because he knew me too well. He saw the tears I was fighting. He saw the pain I tried to hide. His expression changed. Not much. A tiny movement, a slight tightening around his eyes. But I knew him. I knew that look. Someone had crossed a line. Julian slowly turned back toward the room. The entire boutique became silent. The kind of silence that felt unnatural, heavy, waiting. Then he lifted his hand. The movement was simple, almost casual. The guests stared. Chloe frowned. "What are you doing?" Julian did not answer. He raised 2 fingers and snapped. The sound was quiet, a single sharp crack. But somehow it echoed. Not normally. Not like a sound bouncing off walls. It traveled through the entire boutique like a command. Like the building itself had heard him. The lights flickered. The glass displays trembled. The chandelier above us swayed slightly. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then everyone heard it. A sound from outside. At first, it was distant. A low vibration. A deep mechanical rumble rolling through the street. The kind of sound that made the floor shake beneath your feet. The guests turned toward the massive glass entrance. The security guards looked confused. Chloe's smile disappeared. The rumble grew louder and louder. The entire boutique began to tremble. The marble floor vibrated. The crystal decorations hanging from the ceiling rattled. Outside, shadows moved across the glass. Not one vehicle, not 2. Many. A formation. A convoy. The roar of engines swallowed the sounds of the city. People rushed toward the windows. And then they saw them. Black vehicles. A fleet of enormous luxury SUVs moving with absolute precision. Their bodies were dark and flawless, reflecting the boutique's golden lights across their armored surfaces. They looked less like cars and more like machines built for kings, for power, for war. The first vehicle stopped for only a heartbeat. Then it accelerated. My breath caught. "What are they doing?" Someone screamed. The massive tempered glass doors of the boutique shook violently. The guards stepped backward. The guests froze. And then the world exploded. The first SUV crashed through the entrance. The sound was deafening, a thunderous collision that shook the entire building. The enormous glass doors shattered outward. Thousands of fragments exploded into the air. For a moment, it looked like a storm made of diamonds. The beautiful entrance that represented wealth and perfection became a waterfall of broken glass. Pieces rained across the marble floor. They reflected the golden lights above like countless tiny stars. People screamed. They covered their faces. They stumbled backward. The second vehicle followed. Then the third. The sound became overwhelming. Metal, glass, engines. The deep roar of unstoppable machines entering a place that had believed itself untouchable. The boutique that had been filled with quiet luxury moments earlier transformed into chaos. Security alarms began screaming. The air filled with dust and the sharp scent of shattered glass. Expensive perfume was replaced by the smell of burning tires and cold metal. The guards stood frozen, their hands no longer reaching for me. Their faces had lost all confidence. Because suddenly they understood something. They had not been removing someone powerless. They had been threatening someone protected by a force they could not comprehend. The fleet stopped inside the entrance, perfectly aligned, like they had rehearsed the impossible. The doors opened. Men in dark suits stepped out, not rushed, not panicked, controlled, disciplined. Every movement showed absolute authority. The guests stared. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody understood why such powerful people had arrived. Then the door of the lead vehicle opened, and the man who stepped out made the entire room go silent. I recognized him. Everyone recognized him. Not because he was someone people saw often, because he was someone people only talked about. The chairman of the Obsidian Dominion, the man whose empire controlled industries across the world, the man who was considered untouchable, Chloe's ultimate boss, the person even Chloe answered to. But the man walking through the broken glass did not look untouchable. He looked terrified. His expensive suit was slightly disordered. His face was pale. Sweat ran along his forehead despite the cool air inside the boutique. His breathing was heavy. His eyes were fixed on one person, Julian. The billionaire chairman walked forward, slowly, carefully, each step crunching over the shattered glass. The entire room watched. Chloe stared, her lips parted. No, it was barely a whisper. The confidence drained from her face. The color disappeared. Because she knew. She knew exactly who that man was. She knew what his arrival meant. The chairman reached Julian. For a moment, nobody moved. The billionaire who commanded armies of employees, the man who signed billion-dollar agreements without hesitation, the man who made entire corporations bend to his decisions. He looked at Julian, and then something impossible happened. He dropped. Both knees hit the glass-covered marble floor. The sound was sharp. The entire boutique gasped. The chairman lowered his head, not slightly, completely. A gesture of absolute submission, a gesture no one had ever seen from him. His hands rested against the broken glass. His voice shook. Supreme Alpha. The words echoed. Everyone heard them. Every single person. The wealthy guests, the guards, the employees hiding near the back. Chloe, especially Chloe. Her face had transformed. The arrogance was gone. The amusement was gone. The certainty that she controlled this room was gone. She looked at Julian like she was seeing him for the first time. And maybe she was, because the man she had mocked was not a mechanic. The man she had insulted was not someone beneath her. The man she had allowed herself to humiliate was someone who made the most powerful people in the world kneel. Chloe took a step backward, then another. Her heel landed on a piece of broken glass. She did not even notice. Her eyes remained locked on Julian. The faded jacket, the quiet expression, the man she had laughed at, the man she had called pathetic. Her mind struggled to understand what her eyes were showing her. Impossible. It had to be impossible. But the chairman was kneeling, and Julian was standing, calm, silent, untouchable. The entire room waited for him to speak. But Julian did not look at the billionaire. He did not care about the cameras. He did not care about the shocked faces surrounding him. His eyes moved only once, back to me. And in that moment, despite the broken glass, the chaos, and the impossible revelation unfolding around us, I saw the same man who waited for me in the rain. The same man who shared a cheap meal with me under an old building entrance. The same man who held my hand when the world felt too heavy. Except now I finally understood. The world had never ignored Julian because he was powerless. The world had ignored him because he allowed it. And now everyone was about to learn what happened when someone finally pushed the quiet man too far. The boutique fell silent, not the ordinary silence that came after a conversation ended. This was different. This was the kind of silence that came when everyone present realized they had witnessed something impossible. The only sound left was the slow ticking of the engines outside. The black vehicles remained motionless beyond the shattered entrance, their powerful engines humming like sleeping beasts. Tick, tick, tick. The sound echoed through the broken luxury boutique. Glass covered the marble floor. The golden lights above reflected across thousands of fragments, turning the destruction into something strangely beautiful. Nobody moved. Nobody dared. The security guards who had been so confident moments ago stood frozen beside the entrance. The wealthy guests who had laughed quietly at my humiliation now stared at the ground, at the kneeling chairman, at Julian, and finally, at me. Chloe was the only person who seemed unable to accept reality. She remained standing for several seconds, her mouth slightly open, her eyes locked on Julian, the woman who had controlled every room she entered, the woman who had made executives lower their voices and employees lower their heads, the woman who had smiled while crushing my report beneath her shoe. She looked completely lost. No, she whispered. The word barely existed. It was not anger. It was not disbelief. It was fear. Pure, undeniable fear. Her eyes moved from the kneeling chairman to Julian's calm face. Then back again. Her mind was trying to force the pieces together. The man she had mocked, the man she had called pathetic, the man she had dismissed as nothing more than a mechanic, the man standing before her while the most powerful person she knew bowed at his feet. Her breathing became uneven. No, that can't be. Her voice grew smaller. I know who he is. Nobody answered, because everyone else knew too. The chairman of the Obsidian Dominion did not kneel. Not for politicians, not for competitors, not for anyone. Yet he remained on the glass-covered floor, head lowered before Julian. Chloe's confidence finally broke. Her legs seemed to lose their strength. She stumbled backward. One step, then another. Her hand reached for the nearest display case, but her fingers slipped against the smooth surface. The woman who had stood above everyone else suddenly looked very small. No, she repeated. But this time, she was not speaking to anyone. She was speaking to the reality she could not escape, the reality that she had made the greatest mistake of her life. Her knees touched the floor. The expensive fabric of her clothing brushed against the shattered glass. She did not react. She did not care. She was too terrified to feel anything else. Julian never looked at her. Not once. That was what frightened Chloe the most. She had expected anger. She had expected revenge. She had expected him to turn toward her and show her the consequences of her actions. But he did not. She was not important enough for his attention. Not anymore. Julian ignored the kneeling billionaire. He ignored the stunned guests. He ignored the entire world that had suddenly gathered around him. His eyes were only on me. And then he walked, slowly, quietly, through the shattered glass. Every step he took seemed to carry impossible weight, not because he was trying to intimidate anyone, because he no longer needed to. The room already understood. The same man who had made the world's most powerful people kneel was walking toward a woman covered in coffee stains and tears, toward me. I could not move. I could not think. My entire mind felt frozen. A few minutes ago, I had been standing there believing my life had collapsed. I had been fired, humiliated, destroyed, in front of strangers. I had been trying not to cry over a ruined report. And now the man I loved was walking toward me while billionaires bowed behind him. None of it made sense. None of it fit together. Julian stopped in front of me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I looked at him, really looked at him. The amber gold glow in his eyes was still there. The terrifying power I had only glimpsed before was impossible to ignore now. This was not the quiet man everyone underestimated. This was someone who could command the world with a single gesture, someone who could bring an entire fleet of armored vehicles through a building's entrance, someone who could make the most powerful man in the world kneel. And yet, he looked at me like I was the only person in existence. His expression softened completely. The dangerous aura surrounding him faded the moment his eyes met mine. The monster the world feared disappeared, leaving only Julian. My Julian. Eileen, he said quietly. My name. Just my name. But the way he said it almost broke me. Not like Chloe had said it. Not like an accusation. Not like I was a problem to solve. Like it was something precious. Something he was grateful to say. My lips parted. Julian? My voice trembled. I did not know what question to ask first. Who are you? Why did you hide this? How is any of this possible? But before I could speak, his eyes moved to my stained uniform. The coffee marks, the fabric ruined by someone else's cruelty. His jaw tightened, only slightly, but I saw it. I saw the pain, not because my uniform was damaged, because I had been hurt. His hand lifted slowly. He touched my shoulder, gently, almost cautiously, as if even with all his power, he was afraid of hurting me. Then he removed his faded jacket, the same jacket I had seen countless times, the same jacket that had been with him during rainy nights, the same jacket that smelled like him, like rain, like cedar, like warmth, like home. He placed it around my shoulders. The moment the fabric touched me, I felt completely surrounded, protected. The jacket was slightly heavy, warm. It carried his scent so strongly that my chest tightened. For years, I had fought alone. For years, I had walked through cold offices and cruel conversations pretending I did not need anyone. But wrapped in his jacket, standing beside him, I finally felt what it meant to be protected. Not because I was weak, because someone loved me enough to stand beside me. Julian adjusted the jacket carefully, making sure it covered the coffee stains, making sure I was warm, making sure nobody could see the evidence of what had happened. The gesture was so simple, so gentle, and somehow it affected me more than the impossible scene behind him. The billionaire on the floor, the shattered entrance, the terrified crowd. None of that mattered, because Julian was looking at me like I was something priceless. My eyes burned. "I don't understand," I whispered. His expression softened. "I know. You—" I swallowed. "You're not who I thought you were." A faint sadness crossed his face. "I am." The answer surprised me. "I am exactly who you thought I was." I stared at him. He reached up. His hand moved toward my face. The same hand that had crushed solid brass. The same hand that could probably break anything in the world. But when his rough thumb touched my cheek, it was impossibly gentle, careful, tender. He wiped away the tear that had escaped the corner of my eye. The motion was so soft that I almost forgot to breathe. A powerful man who could terrify entire corporations was touching me like I was made of glass, like I was something sacred. The contrast overwhelmed me. His thumb brushed away another tear. "I'm sorry," he whispered. My heart clenched. "For what?" "For letting you stand there alone." The words shocked me. This man. This impossible, powerful man was apologizing to me. Not because he had failed in business. Not because he had lost power. Because I had felt alone for a few minutes. "You don't have to apologize," I whispered. His eyes held mine. "I do." The certainty in his voice was quiet, absolute. "You carried everything by yourself for too long." My vision blurred again. But these tears were different. Not tears of humiliation, not tears of helplessness. They were tears of finally being seen. I thought. My voice broke. I looked down. I thought I had to keep proving I deserved to be here. Julian gently lifted my chin. "No." The word was soft, but powerful. "You never had to prove your worth." His eyes moved over my face. "Not to them." A pause. "Not to anyone." My breath caught. Because for years, I had forgotten that. I had spent so long measuring myself by achievements, salaries, approval, and the opinions of people who never cared. But Julian had always known. He had always seen me. Not the employee. Not the person carrying everyone else's burdens. Me, Eileen. I looked at him. His voice lowered. "You are not something that can be thrown away." A tear slipped down my cheek. He caught it immediately. The same gentle movement, the same impossible tenderness. Behind him was power. Behind him was fear. Behind him was a world that bowed when he entered a room. But in front of me, there was only the man who waited for me in the rain, the man who shared cheap dinners, the man who saved the best part of every meal, the man who held my heart long before I knew he held the world. And that was what terrified me most. Not his power, not his secrets, not the impossible truth unfolding around us. It was the realization that the most powerful person in existence had spent years pretending to be ordinary, just so he could love me without me knowing why. For several seconds, I forgot there was anyone else in the room. I forgot the broken glass beneath our feet. I forgot the billionaire kneeling behind him. I forgot Chloe. All I could feel was Julian's hand resting gently against my face. The same hand that had bent steel and crushed brass. The same hand that could command armies of people with a single word. Yet with me, it moved with impossible care. His thumb lingered for one final second near my cheek before he lowered his hand. Then the warmth in his expression changed. Not disappeared. Never disappeared. But something else returned. The power. The authority, the presence that had made an entire room fall silent. I felt his arm tighten around me slightly, a protective gesture, a silent promise. Then Julian turned. Not away from me. Never away from me. He simply shifted his attention toward the people who had caused my pain. The entire boutique seemed to become colder. The kneeling chairman immediately lowered his head further. The guards stepped backward. The guests held their breath. And Chloe looked like she had forgotten how to breathe, because she finally understood something. Julian had not been ignoring her because he was unaware of her actions. He had been ignoring her because she was insignificant. The realization was worse than any punishment. Julian looked at the broken entrance, the shattered marble, the ruined displays, the coffee stain on the floor, the place where my report had been crushed beneath Chloe's heel. His eyes became unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried through every corner of the boutique. How long? Nobody answered. The chairman remained frozen. Julian looked down at him. How long has this building existed? The chairman swallowed. 32 years, Supreme Alpha. Julian's expression did not change. 32 years. He looked around. 32 years of people walking through these doors believing this place represented elegance. A pause. Power. Another pause. Respect. His eyes moved to the stained pages on the floor. Yet today, someone was humiliated here because she was considered less valuable than the people surrounding her. My chest tightened. Julian's fingers gently touched my shoulder. A reminder, I am here. You allowed this place to exist, Julian continued. His voice remained calm, almost too calm. Not because of the walls. He looked at the billionaire. Not because of the products. His gaze sharpened, but because of what it represented. The chairman trembled. Yes, Supreme Alpha. Julian looked back at the boutique. Then it has failed. The words hung in the air. Failed. Not damaged, not flawed. Failed. Chloe's face went pale. What does that mean? For the first time, her voice sounded small. Julian looked at her, only briefly, and somehow that brief glance made her shrink. It means this building no longer deserves to stand. The room went completely silent. Chloe stared. What? Julian's voice did not rise. Purchase the entire property. He looked at the chairman. Immediately. The billionaire nodded quickly. Yes, Supreme Alpha. Within 5 minutes. A wave of shock moved through the room. 5 minutes. Impossible. A building like this, a property this valuable, a transaction of this size. It should have taken months, legal teams, negotiations, approvals. But everyone there knew something now. When Julian gave an order, the world moved. And after the purchase is complete, Julian continued, demolish it. The guests gasped. Chloe's eyes widened. No. The word escaped her. Julian ignored her. I want this entire structure removed. His voice became colder. Not because it has value. A pause. Because it carries a memory I do not want Eileen to remember. My breath caught. He was doing this because of me. Not because of pride. Not because he wanted to show power. Because he hated that this place was where I had been hurt. Julian? I whispered. He looked at me, and the coldness vanished instantly. I don't want you walking past this building years from now and remembering how they made you feel. My eyes burned. You don't have to destroy everything for me. His expression softened. I know. His thumb brushed lightly against my hand. I'm choosing to. Then he turned back. The softness disappeared. The judgment continued. And Chloe. The sound of her name made her flinch. She looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time, she was not seeing an obstacle. She was seeing the person who controlled her fate. Julian's voice became colder. Your punishment will not be the building. Chloe's lips trembled. Julian, wait. He continued as if he had not heard her. Chairman. The billionaire immediately raised his head. Yes, Supreme Alpha. Freeze every account connected to Chloe and her family. The chairman's face became serious. All assets? All. Julian's eyes remained fixed on Chloe. Properties. A pause. Investments. Another pause. Trust funds. Another. Private holdings. His voice was absolute. Everything. Chloe stopped breathing. No. The word came out quietly. Julian continued. Remove their access to every privilege they gained through wealth. The chairman nodded. Understood. Strip their status. The billionaire lowered his head. Yes, every organization that recognizes their name. Julian's expression remained emotionless. Every social circle that welcomes them because of their fortune. A pause. Every door opened by their family name. His voice became sharper. Close it. Chloe's face collapsed. The woman who had laughed moments ago was gone. The woman who had looked down on me, gone. Now she was simply someone watching her entire world disappear. No. She stood abruptly. No, you can't do that. Her voice cracked. She looked at the chairman. You can't listen to him. The chairman did not even look at her. That hurt her more than anything, because she finally understood. Nobody was going to save her. Nobody was going to tell Julian no. Chloe turned toward me. Her expression changed. Desperation replaced arrogance. Eileen. My name sounded strange coming from her mouth, like she had never said it with respect before. Please. I stared at her. The same woman who had thrown coffee on me. The same woman who had crushed my work. The same woman who had laughed at Julian. Now she was begging. Please tell him to stop. I did not answer. Chloe stepped closer. Her expensive shoes moved over the broken glass. I didn't know. Her voice shook. I didn't know who he was. Julian's expression remained unchanged, but I felt his hand tighten around mine. Chloe looked at him, then back at me. I made a mistake. A bitter feeling moved through my chest. A mistake. That was what she called it. Not cruelty, not humiliation. A mistake, because now there were consequences. I was angry, Chloe continued. I didn't mean, Julian interrupted her. You meant every word. His voice was quiet. Chloe froze. You meant it when you mocked her. A pause. You meant it when you stepped on her work. Another pause. You meant it when you laughed while she tried not to cry. Each sentence struck harder than the last. Your problem was never that you didn't know who I was. Julian looked at her. Your problem was that you believed someone like Eileen was beneath you. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. Real tears. But for the first time, I could not feel sympathy, because I remembered standing there, burning, embarrassed, alone. And she had enjoyed it. Please, Chloe whispered. She lowered herself, not gracefully, not proudly. She fell. Her knees touched the glass-covered floor, the same floor where she had forced me to stand helpless. I'll apologize. Her voice broke. I'll do anything. Julian looked at her without emotion. Anything? Chloe nodded quickly. Yes. Would you go back in time and stop yourself? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Would you take back the words you said? Silence. Would you remove the pain you caused? Her tears fell, because she knew the answer. No, she could not. Julian looked away. Then your apology is only for yourself. The truth destroyed her. Chloe covered her mouth. A sob escaped. My family? Her voice shook. My family has spent generations building everything. Julian looked at her. And you destroyed it. She shook her head desperately. No. His gaze moved to the coffee stain on my uniform. Your family built wealth. A pause. You built arrogance. Another pause. And today, that arrogance cost you everything. Chloe stared at the floor. The reality finally reached her. She had not lost a job. She had not lost a single position. She had destroyed an entire legacy, all because of one cup of coffee, one moment of cruelty, one decision made because she believed she could hurt someone without consequences. Her shoulders shook. I ruined everything. The whisper was almost impossible to hear. I ruined my family. Nobody answered, because it was true. The room watched as the woman who had controlled everyone around her finally understood what power actually looked like. Power was not a designer dress, not a luxury office, not a famous last name. Power was the ability to protect someone who had nothing to give you. Julian looked down at me again. The coldness disappeared immediately. His hand gently adjusted the jacket around my shoulders, making sure I was covered, making sure I was warm. The world had just watched him destroy an empire. But all I saw was the man who cared whether I was cold, the man who remembered my favorite food, the man who waited in the rain, the man who held me like I was more valuable than everything he owned. And standing there, wrapped in his jacket while the most powerful people in the world bowed around us, I finally understood something. Julian had never needed the world to know his name, because the only person whose opinion mattered to him was mine. The realization settled inside me quietly. Not like the shock of seeing the billionaire kneel. Not like the fear that had filled the room when Julian revealed the power he had hidden for so long. It was something softer, something far more overwhelming. For years, I had believed I was fighting alone. I had believed survival meant carrying every burden myself. I had believed strength meant never needing anyone. But Julian had been standing beside me the entire time, not because I was helpless, because he loved me. A strange calm settled over me, and then I heard movement, not from the guests, not from the staff, from outside. The doors of the black SUVs opened, one by one. The sound was quiet, controlled, almost silent. The men who stepped out did not rush. They did not shout. They did not need to. They moved with the kind of discipline that came from absolute confidence. They wore dark suits without any unnecessary details. Their expressions were unreadable. Their presence alone changed the atmosphere. The boutique had been filled with chaos moments before, screaming, shattering glass, panic. But when those men entered, everything stopped. The remaining guests held their breath. The employees stood perfectly still. Nobody whispered. Nobody moved. It felt as if the entire room understood the same thing. These men were not here to make a scene. They were here to carry out an order. Chloe saw them, and for the first time since everything began, she looked truly afraid. No. Her voice was barely audible. She backed away. No, wait. The elegant confidence was gone. The sharp words, the cruel smile, the arrogance, all of it had disappeared. There was only panic. Julian. She looked toward him desperately. Please. Julian did not answer. He did not even look at her. His attention remained on me. That hurt Chloe more than anger would have, because she finally understood. She was no longer important, not to him, not to the world she thought she controlled. The bodyguards moved forward. Chloe immediately began shaking her head. No, don't touch me. Her voice rose. You don't understand who I am. Nobody stopped. I said, don't touch me. Her scream echoed through the ruined boutique. But the men did not react. They reached her calmly. One took hold of her arm. Another secured her movement. Not roughly, not cruelly, just firmly, like removing something that no longer belonged. Chloe struggled. Her heels scraped against the marble. Let go of me. Her voice cracked. I am Chloe Vale. Nobody cared. I have connections. Silence. My family owns. The words stopped, because she remembered. Her family owned nothing now. Not in the way it mattered. Not after Julian's judgment. Her face collapsed. No. The sob came suddenly. I can't lose everything. She looked around the room. At the guests who had laughed with her earlier. At the employees who had feared her. At the beautiful boutique she believed would always belong to her world. Nobody stepped forward. Nobody defended her. Because everyone had seen the truth. She had never been powerful. She had only been standing on borrowed privilege. And now the person who had provided that privilege had taken it away. Please, Chloe whispered. But the bodyguards continued. They dragged her toward the shattered entrance. Her cries echoed against the marble walls. The sound grew smaller, further away, until the doors swallowed her completely, and then she was gone. The room remained silent. The socialites looked down. The employees avoided eye contact. Nobody dared speak, because everyone understood what had just happened. A woman had lost everything, and the only reason she had been defeated was because she had mistaken kindness for weakness. Julian turned back to me. The terrifying authority vanished, like a shadow disappearing when the light returns. His eyes softened. Eileen. I looked at him. I wanted to say something, anything, but my body had finally reached its limit. The adrenaline that had kept me standing began to fade. The fear, the humiliation, the exhaustion from years of fighting. Everything crashed over me at once. My knees weakened. Julian noticed immediately. Of course he did. He always noticed. Before I could even apologize or pretend I was fine, his arms moved around me. One arm behind my back, one beneath my knees, and suddenly I was lifted. I froze. Julian. My voice was barely a whisper. He looked down at me. You're exhausted. I opened my mouth to deny it. The old instinct. The instinct that had carried me through 5 years of impossible days. I'm fine. I can handle it. I don't need help. But I couldn't say it. Not anymore. Because his arms were around me. Because his expression held no judgment. Only love. So I stopped fighting. For the first time in years, I stopped fighting. I let my head fall against his chest. I buried my face into him. His scent surrounded me. The familiar warmth of him. The same scent that had comforted me on rainy nights. The same scent that had waited for me outside the office. The same scent that had made a broken meal feel like a feast. I closed my eyes, and my body finally relaxed. The world could have been collapsing around us. I would have been safe, because Julian was holding me. His arms tightened slightly, not enough to restrain, only enough to reassure. I have you, he whispered. 3 words. Simple. But they broke through every wall I had built. My fingers curled into his jacket. I realized I was holding on to him. Not because I was afraid, because I finally allowed myself to. The room watched silently as Julian carried me away. The same man who had made powerful people kneel. The same man who had destroyed a corporation's symbol with a sentence. He carried me like I was something precious, something fragile, something irreplaceable. He walked through the shattered entrance. The broken glass that had marked the beginning of my humiliation now surrounded us as we left. But this time, I was not walking out defeated. I was leaving protected. The cold night air touched my face. The chaos of the boutique faded behind us. The shouting, the accusations, the cruel laughter. All of it disappeared. Outside, the world felt different, quiet, still. The black SUVs waited under the city lights. Their dark surfaces reflected the broken entrance behind us. The lead vehicle stood apart from the others, massive, armored, imposing. But as Julian carried me toward it, I did not see a symbol of power. I saw a place where I could finally breathe. One of the bodyguards opened the rear door. A warm glow spilled from inside. The cabin was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was spacious, not just a vehicle, a private sanctuary. Soft leather seats stretched across the interior. The lighting was gentle. The air was perfectly controlled. Everything was designed for comfort, for privacy, for someone who never had to ask for anything. Julian stepped inside while still holding me. The contrast was almost unreal. Minutes ago, he had stood in a destroyed boutique while the world trembled around him. Now he moved carefully through the luxurious cabin, making sure I did not bump my head, making sure I was comfortable, making sure I was safe. He lowered me onto the seat gently, like placing something priceless down. The moment my back touched the soft leather, I felt the exhaustion return. The kind that came from years of carrying too much. Julian remained beside me. He did not immediately leave. He did not turn back to handle business. He stayed. I looked up at him. The question was still there. So many questions. Who are you? Why did you hide? How could someone like you choose someone like me? But before I could ask, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair away from my face. The gesture was so normal, so familiar, and somehow that made everything even more overwhelming. Outside the vehicle, the world knew him as something untouchable. Inside this cabin, he was simply Julian, the man who loved me. The door closed, the outside world disappeared. The screams, the broken boutique, the judgment, the fear, gone. Only silence remained. A heavy, intimate silence, the kind that existed between two people who had survived a storm. I sat there wrapped in his jacket, and for the first time in 5 years, I allowed myself to rest. And for a while, I did not know what that felt like anymore. The vehicle began moving, smoothly, quietly. The chaos of the boutique disappeared behind us, replaced by the soft vibration of the road beneath the armored tires. Outside the tinted windows, the city passed by in waves of color. Silverwood City glowed beneath the night sky. Towering buildings stretched toward the clouds, their glass surfaces reflecting thousands of neon lights. Digital signs flickered across the skyline. Street lamps painted golden lines across the roads. The endless movement of the city continued as if nothing had happened, as if my entire world had not just been turned upside down. Inside the cabin, however, everything was still. The soundproof walls blocked out the outside world completely. No traffic, no voices, no chaos, just Julian and me. The cabin was enormous. Soft lights illuminated the interior, creating a warm glow against the dark leather and polished surfaces. It did not feel like a vehicle. It felt like a private room moving through the city, a place where the rest of the world could not reach us. I sat quietly, still wearing his jacket. My fingers rested against the fabric. I could not stop thinking about how strange everything was. The man beside me was the same person who had shared cheap meals with me, the same person who had waited in the rain, the same person who had laughed softly when his old motorcycle refused to start. But he was also the man who made billionaires kneel, the man who could erase companies with a sentence, the man who had hidden an entire empire behind a quiet smile. My mind could not connect the two versions, but my heart could, because no matter how impossible everything seemed, he was still Julian. He noticed me staring. Of course he did. You have questions. His voice was gentle. I looked away. I have a lot. A faint smile touched his lips. I know. The silence between us was comfortable, not empty, never empty. Then his expression changed slightly. His eyes moved to my shoulder, to the place where the coffee had burned through the silk. The warmth disappeared from his face. Not because he was angry, because he was worried. Eileen, I looked at him. Does it hurt? I almost laughed. After everything that had happened, that was what he asked. Not about Chloe. Not about the company. Not about the billionaire who had knelt before him. The first thing he cared about was whether I was hurt. I'm fine. The words came automatically. Julian raised an eyebrow. I sighed softly. Okay. I corrected myself. It hurts a little. He reached toward the small compartment beside him. He opened it and removed a medical kit. I stared. You keep a medical kit in your car? He looked almost embarrassed. I keep one everywhere. Everywhere? He nodded. I could not help smiling slightly. That was such a Julian thing to do. The most powerful man in the world carried medical supplies because someone might get hurt. He moved closer. May I? I nodded. His fingers gently moved the fabric away from the irritated skin. The same hands that could crush metal now moved with extraordinary care. Under the soft cabin lights, I saw the faint redness left behind by the coffee. Julian's expression tightened. I had seen him calm while facing powerful executives. I had seen him silent while an entire room trembled. But this small mark on my skin affected him more than any threat. I'm sorry. My heart tightened. Julian, I should have been there sooner. I stared at him. You were there. His eyes lifted to mine. You were sitting there. He looked away briefly. Watching you hurt. His voice became quieter. I promised myself I would protect you. You did. He shook his head. Not enough. The sadness in his voice surprised me. This man who seemed capable of controlling everything was blaming himself because someone spilled coffee on me. I reached out and touched his hand. Julian, he looked at me. You saved me. A pause. You have saved me for years. Something changed in his expression. A small crack in the perfect control he always carried. Do you know when I first realized I loved you? The question surprised me. I shook my head. He looked out the window. The city lights reflected faintly in his eyes. It wasn't when you looked beautiful. My face warmed. It wasn't when you smiled. He turned back toward me. It was when I saw you exhausted, standing alone, carrying problems that should have belonged to other people. His voice softened. Everyone around you was taking. A pause. Your time. Another. Your energy. Your kindness. He looked down at our hands. But you still gave. My throat tightened. I don't understand. What? Why me? The question had lived inside me for years. Why would someone like Julian choose someone like me? Someone ordinary, someone tired, someone who spent most of her life just trying to survive. His expression became incredibly gentle. Because you were real. The answer came instantly. No hesitation, no doubt. You were the only real thing I found. I looked at him silently. Julian leaned back slightly. I was born into a world where everyone wanted something. His voice changed, not colder, older, like he was remembering something painful. The wealthy wanted influence. The powerful wanted control. The ambitious wanted my name. The people around me smiled because they knew what I could give them. He looked out at the passing city. Every conversation was a negotiation. Every relationship was a transaction. His fingers tightened slightly around mine. I became very good at reading people. A small, humorless smile appeared. I could tell when someone was lying before they finished speaking. I listened quietly. Eventually, I became tired. Tired of what? The masks. The word was quiet. The endless pretending. He looked at me. Everyone wanted to stand near my power, but nobody wanted to know me. The cabin became even quieter. So I disappeared. I blinked. You just disappeared? He nodded. I left the world I created. Why? Because I wanted to know if anyone could see me without knowing my name. My breath caught. I became Julian. He smiled faintly. Just Julian. The mechanic? He nodded. The mechanic. I thought about the old motorcycle, the worn jacket, the grease on his hands, the tiny apartment where we had spent evenings together. You really fixed engines? A small laugh escaped him. Yes. Even though you could buy every mechanic shop in the world? Especially because of that. I looked confused. He squeezed my hand. When I was Julian, people did not treat me differently because of my money. They treated me differently because of who I was. His eyes softened. And then I met you. My heart skipped. You didn't care. I smiled faintly. I thought you were just a quiet mechanic who needed to stop pretending he wasn't hungry. A real smile appeared on his face. You noticed. Of course I noticed. I looked down. You always gave me the bigger portion. He became quiet. Because he knew. I knew. All those small things mattered. I watched you, he said. The words were not frightening. They were tender. I watched you go to work every day knowing people would hurt you. My eyes lowered. I watched you come home exhausted. A pause. I watched you cry when you thought nobody could see. My chest tightened. And you still got up the next morning. His voice became full of emotion. You never became cruel. You never became like them. You were surrounded by greed, but you remained kind. I looked at him. You were the only person in my life who wanted nothing from me. A tear slipped down my cheek. Julian wiped it away immediately. You were not impressed by my power. He smiled softly. You were worried about whether I had eaten. I laughed through the tears. Because you always forgot. I did not forget. You did. I was busy. Being a billionaire? Being your mechanic. The answer was so simple, so sincere. It broke my heart, Because suddenly I understood. The disguise was not a game. It was not a test. He was not hiding because he thought I was unworthy of knowing. He was hiding because he wanted something impossible. A love untouched by power. A connection untouched by wealth. He wanted someone to choose Julian. Not the supreme alpha, not the billionaire, not the man the world feared, just him, and I had. My fingers tightened around his. How long? He looked at me. How long what? How long have you loved me? For the first time that night, Julian looked almost uncertain, like the answer mattered more than anything else. From the moment I realized you were kinder to me than anyone who knew my real identity. My breath stopped. That was years ago. He nodded. Yes. I looked at the man beside me, the man who had hidden the world at his feet, the man who had chosen to sit beside me in the rain. And I finally understood. He did not need a queen. He did not need someone powerful. He did not need someone who could stand beside his empire. He had searched the entire world for something genuine, and he found it in the exhausted woman who kept going even when nobody thanked her. Outside, the neon lights continued passing by. The city moved. The world continued. But inside that silent cabin, everything had changed. Because I finally knew the truth. Julian had not hidden his power from me because he was ashamed. He had hidden it because my love was the only thing he ever wanted that money could never buy. The words stayed between us. Not spoken. Not needed. Because somehow, after everything that had happened, I finally understood. The world had spent years chasing Julian's power, his influence, his wealth, his name. But I had fallen in love with the man who sat beside me in the rain, the man who carried old tools in his motorcycle bag, the man who saved half his meal because he wanted me to have more, the man who listened to my exhaustion without ever making me feel like a burden, the man who never once asked me to become someone else. A quiet laugh escaped me through my tears. Julian looked at me. What? I shook my head. I just can't believe you. His expression softened. Why? Because all this time? I looked around the impossible luxury cabin. The entire world was beneath your feet. A faint smile appeared. And you were still worried about whether I ate dinner. His eyes, that was more important. My heart ached. Julian. He reached toward me. His fingers brushed gently through my hair. The movement was so familiar, so ordinary. And yet, everything about this moment was extraordinary. You still don't understand, do you? I looked at him. What? He leaned closer. The world has never been what I wanted. His voice lowered. Not the money, not the companies, not the power. He paused. I built all of it because I had to. His thumb traced gently along the back of my hand. But you? His eyes held mine. You are the first thing I ever chose. Before I could answer, Julian shifted closer, his arm wrapped around my waist, slowly, carefully, giving me every opportunity to move away. But I didn't. I trusted him. I always had. He pulled me toward him, lifting me gently onto his lap. For a moment, I froze. Not because I was uncomfortable, because I was overwhelmed. The man who had just commanded the attention of the entire world was holding me like I was his most precious possession. Not an object, not a prize. Something loved, something treasured. I rested against his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath me, strong, certain, the same heartbeat I had listened to on countless ordinary nights when I believed he was just Julian. And maybe that was the most beautiful part. The power had always been there, but so had the kindness. I need you to hear me clearly, he said. His voice was different now, not the voice of the supreme alpha, not the voice that made billionaires kneel, the voice of the man who loved me. I do not want you beside me because I saved you. I looked up. I do not want you beside me because the world will fear you through me. His hand rested gently against my back. I want you beside me because you are the only person who ever made me feel human. My eyes filled again. You are not beneath me, Eileen. His voice became firm. You never were. You are not someone I protect because you are weak. A pause. You are someone I protect because you are precious. I swallowed. Julian's gaze became intense. You stood alone for years. You carried pain that would have broken most people. You walked through cruelty and still chose kindness. His fingers intertwined with mine. That is not weakness. That is power. The city lights moved across the tinted windows behind him, thousands of stars reflected against the dark glass, but I barely noticed them, because Julian was looking at me like I was the only light he needed. I claim you, he whispered. My heart stopped, not as something I own. His hand lifted to my face, never as something beneath me. His eyes burned with absolute certainty. I claim you as my equal. A silence followed. A beautiful, overwhelming silence, as my partner. A pause, as my queen. The word settled deep inside me. Queen. Not because of a title, not because of wealth, not because of the empire waiting outside these doors, because he saw something in me that I had forgotten existed. Worth. I spent my entire life building a throne, Julian said. His voice was quiet, but I never had anyone I wanted to place beside me. His fingers brushed away another tear. Until you. I could barely speak. Julian, he held me closer. I promise you something. The certainty in his voice made the world feel still. Never again will anyone make you feel small. A pause. Never again will anyone make you believe your kindness is something to exploit. Another pause. Never again will you stand alone while someone tries to break you. His eyes moved toward the city beyond the window. The world has spent years taking from you. Then he looked back at me. Now, it will learn what happens when it protects you. I smiled softly through my tears. That sounds terrifying. A small smile appeared on his face. Good. I laughed. A real laugh. The first one that had come from me in what felt like forever. Julian looked relieved to hear it. And that almost made me cry again. Because after everything, after all the power, after all the impossible revelations, the thing that mattered most to him was still my happiness. I rested my forehead against his. You know what is strange? What? I still think of you waiting outside my office in the rain. His smile softened. That was my favorite version of myself. Even as the mechanic? Especially as the mechanic. I smiled. Why? Because when I was Julian the mechanic, you loved me before the world knew my name. The answer was so simple, so honest. I closed my eyes, and I realized something. The world believed power came from control, from wealth, from making others afraid. But Julian's greatest strength was something completely different. He had everything, and he still chose love. The vehicle continued through the city. Outside the tinted windows, Silverwood City stretched endlessly beneath the night sky. The towers, the lights, the roads filled with millions of lives. A world of ambition and dreams. A world Julian had quietly shaped from the shadows. But now, sitting in his arms, I did not feel like I was entering his world. I felt like I belonged there, not because he gave it to me, because he believed I had always deserved it. Julian wrapped his arms around me. The city lights reflected in the glass around us. The world is waiting, he whispered. I looked out at the endless skyline. And what happens now? He looked at me. A small, confident smile appeared. Now? He kissed my forehead gently. Now we build something better. I leaned against him. The man who had hidden an empire. The man who had chosen a simple life. The man who had found his greatest treasure not in power, but in a woman who kept standing no matter how many times the world tried to push her down. Outside, the city belonged to him. But inside that quiet cabin, surrounded by warmth and trust, I knew the truth. He had never wanted the world. He had only wanted a place where we could stand together. And now, beneath the endless lights of the city, we finally had it. A future that belonged to both of us. True strength is not found in arrogance, wealth, or the ability to control others, but in resilience, compassion, and the courage to remain kind through hardship. Sometimes the greatest blessings are hidden behind the simplest appearances, waiting for those who can see beyond the surface. If you enjoyed this story of resilience and redemption, please subscribe for more original audiobooks. Hit the like button and share your thoughts below.